Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about rule books. Love them or hate them, they are an inevitable part of the board gaming hobby and something that I have talked about in the past in several other videos, mostly discussing what I like and don't like, what I find to be good and bad about them, following rules and things of that nature. Today I wanted to talk about my 5 favorite board game rule books, whether it means that they're just entertaining, they're very well written, they're technically detailed, they're easy to navigate, or some combination of all of that. Those are all of the criteria that I personally looked at when I found these particular games. But with that, of course, you guys know I love to hear from you. What are your favorite rule books in gaming and why? Let me know in the comments below. But with that, we are going to get started right off with my number 5. At number 5, I've got Twilight Imperium, specifically the 4th edition. There are 2 major reasons for this. 1, 2. The fact that you have 2 essentially separate rule books. One of them is the rules reference, which contains information on every single rule in the game and how to apply it. The second one being the learn to play. This has all of the information that you need to just dive right in and start playing the game. I find that stuff like this is particularly important for a large game like this, and on top of that, it introduces some of the mechanics gradually so that you don't get completely overwhelmed. It makes for a wonderful combination and makes the game work quite well. The reason it's so low on the list though is because it is the 4th edition. They've had a lot of time to perfect it, though from the 3rd to 4th edition they did make a lot of very welcome changes. All in all though, Twilight Imperium 4th edition, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Dungeon Lords. This is a rulebook that I've talked about quite a bit when I've discussed this topic because, frankly, it is downright entertaining. The rules themselves are relatively well written technically, but it is presented as a dialogue between 2 demons, essentially, and it is genuinely funny to read some of the responses and all that kind of stuff that they have. I absolutely adore it. It's lower on the list, though, because it does have some technical errors and it can be kind of tough to find specific rules, but it also has a similar boon to Twilight Imperium where it has that sort of introductory game so that you don't get all of the rules all at once and you don't get overwhelmed because the game itself is relatively complex. But with all that, Dungeon Lords, my number 4. At number 3, I've got Dominant Species. This is a complex game from a company known for making complex games, and essentially the rulebook itself is very technically well written. It's extremely easy to find particular aspects of the rules related to particular action phases and all of that kind of thing. It's very easy to look them up in here, and on top of that, you have pictures everywhere. You have wonderfully well thought out examples of how things work. You have different situations for everything laying out for you so that you know exactly how to go about doing it. It makes playing the game very, very simple, which is saying something for a game that has so many elements to it. That said, it's not particularly entertaining, but like I said, technically exceedingly well done, and I absolutely love it. Dominant Species, my number 3. At number 2, I've got Mage Knight. This is a really nice combination of everything that I've mentioned so far. It has the sort of scaled difficulty to where you start off really easy and then you gradually add rules, in this case through the use of scenarios, which is a huge part of this game as a whole. In addition, as far as technical aspects are concerned, this game is technically very, very well written, and like Dominant Species, it's extremely easy to find any particular rule that you need whenever you need it. On top of that, like I said, you have different scenarios that you can play through. The first scenario is meant to be very easy and essentially an introduction to the game, and then you add more and more as you go through all the various scenarios. That said, the rulebook itself is not super entertaining, but that's okay. Not all rulebooks have to be, and that's why Mage Knight is my number 2. At number 1, I have Alchemists. This represents the culmination of pretty much everything that I have talked about thus far. It doesn't have the entire tiered system that we see in some of the other ones, but it does have different variants of the game to make it easier or more difficult, and on top of that, it explains it in a simple way because during the first round you can only do certain things, and then after that it introduces the rest of the aspects. Technically speaking, the book is very well written, and it's super easy to look up particular aspects of the game, what you need to do, when you need to do them. And once again, it's teaming with pictures, examples, and how to do absolutely everything. On top of that, it actually runs with an app as well, which tells you exactly what's going on and what you need to do. Last but absolutely not least is my personal bias, which is the humor for this particular book. The humor is in here. I find it to be hilarious, but that's partially because it's all geared toward academic science. They do a lot of like sort of pokes and prods towards academia and make a lot of jokes about it, and I always laugh whenever I read it. That said, it might not be as appreciated for you in your circles, but I really adore it. Alchemists, my number one. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite rulebooks for board games. It's a bit of an unusual thing, but the fact is, every single board game has to have rules, which means everything has to have a rule book of some sort. So why can't we at least be somewhat entertained by the rules, or at the very least, not have the tedium of trying to look through and find something that is buried in the back or at the bottom of the page that we can't find. But that said, you guys know I always love to hear from you. What are your personal favorite rule books? And more importantly, what are the criteria that you use to decide them? Please let me know anything and everything in the comments below, because you guys know I love to hear it all. That said, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at all my various social media pages, as well as my Patreon page. On all of those, you'll be able to interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really fun ways. But with that, thank you again so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.